I'm here with Alyssa Rushton, who has had a near death experience while dying from an overdose of 28 medications that Western medicine had told her she needed to manage her multiple autoimmune diseases. So, today we're going to learn about her near death experience and her incredible healing journey from having all of these autoimmune conditions to where she is today. So, thank you so much for joining me, Alyssa.
Oh my gosh, Melissa, I'm so excited to be here. I've been really looking forward to this.
Me too. So let's dive right in. And if you wouldn't mind sharing about your near death experience and anything that led up to that that's important to the story.
Yeah, well, let's start off by saying I wasn't always super sick. I used to be like a normal, healthy person. And I think, like a lot of people, I had a lot of traumatic events that happened to me in my life. And my family's way of dealing with trauma was kind of like, have a couple more cigarettes and a glass of nice Cabernet and work a little harder and you'll get over it. So I didn't have any actual tools to use to deal with traumatic events. So I literally did just that. I was a smoker and a drinker, although I didn't see that as a problem. And I was working my way up the corporate ladder for a Fortune 100 company. And I just threw myself into work and just buried things so deeply. So what started to happen though was my body was rebelling against the stress and weird symptoms started to crop up and all these weird things, random stuff started to happening. My joints started to hurt. I would get random nosebleeds at work. I was always in the bathroom. And in fact, I can remember when I got a promotion at my corporate job, my digestion was such a mess. And these women were kind of talking, and I walked into my cubicle and I heard them saying, I think Alyssa's anorexic. And one of them said, no, I think she's bulimic.
Oh, no.
And I know. And my heart just sank because I thought if they just knew how awful I felt and how my digestion literally, I was in the bathroom so much because my food was just running through me. I couldn't process anything. I was so stressed out. So, meanwhile, they're thinking I have an eating disorder because I was so thin, I couldn't, hold anything in. So, it just so happened that at corporate, I got another promotion. I call it to the gray cubicle of death, right? Some of your listeners might even be listening right now from the gray cubicle
Right.
of death, right? You might be like, oh my God, I'm in there right now listening. So I was doing a job as a corporate sales trainer, but then once I got promoted, I that one thing that I loved doing, which was training and teaching people, went away. And so now I'm climbing the corporate ladder. It's super competitive. Women are gossiping about me because I'm too thin and I'm in
Oh,
the
no.
bathroom all the time, right? And the stress just mounted. And I was 27 at the time. And my health just finally hit this implosion moment. And I had bronchitis. And of course, I was smoking and I got pneumonia and things just went downhill from there. So ultimately, I started chasing diagnoses and trying to figure out what's wrong with me. Why do my joints hurt? Why is my digestion a mess? And I kept getting diagnosis after diagnosis after diagnosis. I got diagnosed first with MS, then rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, and the list just kept going and going and going. And, at the time, I was exploring Western medication. And so doctors would offer me a prescription. And I was all too keen and eager to be excited about getting a prescription. I'm like, yeah, let's get a pill for this, do you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I
And
mean, if you're in that much pain and that your body's in that much inflammation, I imagine you would be willing to try pretty much anything.
totally, except changing my diet and my lifestyle and my
Right.
mental habits and dealing with stress, right? At the time,
Mhm.
I didn't know about any of that. And
Right.
doctors weren't really talking about that either. Even though I was a 2 pack a day smoker, the doctors weren't really saying, hey, have you thought about quitting smoking? Hey, have you thought about cooling it on the pot a day of coffee you're drinking? So yeah, so I just was on this medication train. And then before you knew it, I was really sick and I was still working at corporate, but I had gained about 60 pounds already because they put me on steroid. So I'm, eating like I'm a linebacker because I'm so hungry and I'm still in all this pain. And I finally ended up with this doctor who was like, you also have Lyme disease. And so we're going to put you on this antibiotic protocol. Basically, it's like chemotherapy, only antibiotics. It kills everything in your body, basically. It's designed to seek and destroy all life and kill it. And so,
Wow.
yes. And so I had a PICC line installed in my arm that went to my heart. I was on IV, infusions every day. And along the way, I got sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker and more and more pain medication until I was really on end of life pain management. Those fentanyl suckers they
Yeah.
give to cancer patients, I
Yeah.
was taking those. By the way, everybody's seen the commercials probably by now. The fentanyl can kill you. Even just getting a hold of a sucker one time
Mhm.
can kill you. So I'm taking 4 and 6 of these things a day. I know, along with 28 different other medications. So one fateful day, I had just had way too much medication.
Mhm.
And I was married at the time, and my ex husband would tell you I was riding the line between life and death many
Mhm.
days. It was very close. And on this fateful day, I didn't feel good. I woke up at night, didn't feel well, went to the bathroom, which, by the way, is where a lot of people die because they don't feel well, so they go to the bathroom. Elvis did it, so, why can't I? So, yeah, so I ended up dying on the potty, and that was my near death. I mean, literally died right on the potty, and now here's the cool part is, people are always like, "Oh, well, what was happening on the ground?" My cool part was coming out of the body and really moving into that space of being one with God or divine source energy. So the story kind of takes two branches, right? It takes the 3D, I'm dead on the toilet branch, and then it also takes the upward journey branch.
Wow. You had quite a journey leading up to your near death experience. My heart just goes out to you with everything that you were dealing with. I can't imagine continuing to work and have a family life while dealing with all of those physical conditions.
Well, I actually didn't. I had to leave my corporate job,
Yeah.
absolutely
Mhm.
had to leave that corporate job. And as far as a family life, I mean, I feel so bad for my ex-husband. I mean, he had to do everything. And you have to
Mhm.
understand, I was 240 pounds. I was wearing a diaper. I used a walker to get around. It
Mhm.
literally was like a person at the end of their life, only I was barely 30.
Mhm. Okay, so you're on the toilet and your body's just had enough. And so what happens in your experience from that point?
I want to take a moment to share with you about these amazing supplements I found. As an active plant based mom of three, it's been on my bucket list for quite a while to find a supplement company that is both affordable and has quality ingredients. And I was beginning to think that such a company did not exist. And then I discovered Organic Muscle. These amazing supplements delivered all I was looking for and more. Every Organic Muscle product is made with fresh, whole food, organic, plant based ingredients, and Organic Muscle plants a tree for every unit that is sold. It fits perfectly into the Jesus Way diet and lifestyle. This is my favorite, the Reds Blend Caffeine Free Energy. It's filled with fresh, organic, whole food ingredients like artichoke, pomegranate, raspberry, reishi, cranberry, beets, and more. Click here or check the description to get some for yourself, get some for your loved ones. Treat your body like the temple it is. Thank you to Organic Muscle for partnering with me in this video. Now back to the show.
Yes. Okay. Well, this is the fun part, right? Because I got to take a journey out of my body. And unlike a lot of people who are not on drugs when they die, it's a different experience when you are on drugs because a lot of people, when they die, see their body and they leave it. And I didn't have that. I was sort of unconscious in my body enough that I had to leave my body for a while before my soul got its consciousness back. So by the time I got up and out of the body, I was out of the body a long ways away, and I was getting sucked up into what I call divine consciousness or God consciousness, universal consciousness. And it was the most physical feeling I've ever felt without a body. It was like, if you can imagine the tightest piece of clothing you've ever put on, taking that off and this freedom feeling and expansion feeling, it was a very, I call it like an elastic feeling, because you just felt like you could stretch beyond the bounds of any place you've ever stretched beyond before. And it felt very physical, only just no body boundaries to how far you could stretch. And so then I'm moving up, 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 up into this God consciousness, and it feels just blissful and bathed in love. And I got to this place where I felt like I was one with everything, one with God consciousness, one with maybe like a soul family or this really, really big energy. And I often describe it like this. If you've ever seen that movie where there's a man sitting in front of all these different security cameras,
Yeah.
there's, yeah, thousands and thousands of cameras per se, but they were more like a bubble, little bubbles of energy. And each one of these bubbles of energy is like individuated experiences. And I could go into any of them, and they were billions of them. So literally, I could be everywhere all at once and explore and dive in and like stretch my consciousness and feel and see and have the experience of whatever individuated bubbles I was working with at the time. And you could work with so many of them all at once. It was literally the feeling of being everywhere all at once.
Incredible. So, do you remember what any of those experiences were that you had?
Yeah, so a lot of it at first was like understanding that like I could go and be a plant. I could go and be this person. I could go and be multiple people. I could go and be the earth. I could go and be off planet stuff like other galaxies. I could go and be in other universes. I could go and be in our universe. I could go and look at Pleiadians and Arcturians and some things that I don't have good words for. Right? So I can go and be all of these things all at once. I also, while there, understood or got the download of like how our universe is put together from a mathematical perspective and a light ray perspective. So I saw it as first light, like consciousness comes out as light and then informs sound, and then that informs sacred geometry, and then that informs matter. So it was showing me like all of this stuff. In fact, I can remember coming back, I was trying to hold on to the math. By the way, I'm terrible at math, but I can remember like trying to be like, okay, I want to remember the math. The next, like the day after my near death experience and subsequent days, I'm like, please let me remember, because it was so, the math was so like beautiful. So, yeah, so many different levels of consciousness and like just being able to access so many different experiences all at the same time. And ultimately, what I felt when I was over there on the other side was that it was like God consciousness, universal consciousness really is everything. It's everything. And we down here don't necessarily understand that we're totally connected at all times to that divine God consciousness. But divine God consciousness totally understands on the other side that it's connected to us. And so the experience, what I felt was the experiences were feeding back like a feedback loop mechanism to expand, 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 expand consciousness. So all of our experiences, everything from the ant to the grass to the grain of sand to you, Melissa, me, Alyssa, and John down the street, and alternate versions of John, right? Because in the universe, there was billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of different Earth possibilities and Earth potentials and Melissa potentials and Alyssa potentials and possibilities, and they're all happening all at once. So I got to see like how I often call time like a pancake stack, because time doesn't really happen up there like it happens down here. It's a total construct of our Earth. Up there, everything's happening in the now moment, and all of these different possibilities are available to us. And that's one of the biggest things that when I came back, I'm like, oh, I gotta help people see like they don't have to keep doing what they're doing. They can pop up into a different version of themselves or a different possibility of themselves and work that instead of what they may not be liking about their life.
Wow, that's incredible. We could seriously just park here for the rest of the hour. There's so many different questions I have. You mentioned the different potentials and that we can switch to a different potential. Are all of those potentials occurring on the other side? And how would one go about switching into a different one?
Oh, I love this. Okay. So let me answer your question with a question, then I'll answer your question.
Okay.
It's like asking, how do if I'm listening to this station on Spotify, right? I'm listening to this station on Spotify. It's jazzy vibes. How do I go from listening to jazzy vibes to listening to 80s classic rock?
Uh-huh.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
literally, how you do it is you just change the channel. You just type in 80s classic rock and you go there.
Right.
Now, let me answer your question. Here's where human beings struggle. Human beings have a mental construct that we have one life, we live one reality, and that is that, and that we have to slog through space and time if we want to make a change. For example, we want to buy a new house. We don't have the money to buy that house. So we have to save up the money. We have to, maybe get a second job and blah, 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 and move through space and time in order to get to the outcome we want, right? That's how we've been trained life works as a human. I am here to tell you that is how life can work, but it also works like this. You want to buy a house, you don't have the money, you align with the version of yourself that already has the money, because that version of you is already out there. It's happening right now in the infinite potential field. So one of the things I teach people to do is collapse time, collapse the waveform, and align your now self with this version of yourself that's already there and snap yourself to that. And so it sounds hard when we're talking about being a human and doing it, but you instantly get it when I say, how do you switch from jazzy vibes to 80s classic rock? You just change the dial. And so how you do this in yourself is you have to tune into the version of you that already has the things, and train your physical body to feel those neurochemicals. Because once your physical body feels those neurochemicals, you snap there. Most people are so programmed into feeling their neural chemistry that they stay right where they're at. And it's one big reason why I believe I was able to get off drugs that a human being really shouldn't be able to get off of. I mean, they really are designed to keep you addicted forever, because most people are going to die. And so it's like, well, we don't care about someone becoming so highly addicted to this. So I had to snap myself to the version of myself that would no sooner put a drug in my body, than harm myself or harm another being. So I'm hopeful that answers your question, and we can dig in a little bit more if you have questions. But literally, you have to change the dial on who you're attuning yourself to and the version of yourself that you're feeling every day. And when you do that, and by the way, it takes most people, when they work this skill, it takes most people about a week. And they can
That's
have a totally different experience.
so fascinating. I was wondering if you would say something about the feeling, because this is something that comes up a lot, like with Joe Dispenza's work and others talking, where he'll train people to change the way you feel about your life and create the feeling of what you want as if it's already happened. It's so simple, but it can be so difficult for people because I think we get addicted to our more negative emotions. Not that there's any bad emotion, but we really get set in our ways and our habitual feelings, I guess.
Yeah, and when you say the word we get addicted to it, not only is it can be an addiction, but the body is really wired neurochemically to produce the same chemicals over and over and over, even if they're not happy chemicals. Like, here's a great example. So, a lot of people will relate with this, where their very first reaction to something going wrong is to be frustrated. And they'll cue up this frustration. And that's their very first reaction rather than curiosity, rather than like, oh, that's okay. Like pass the salt kind of, oh, no big deal. Right. But they're trained into frustration. And the reason why? Because their parents did it. And their parents did it.
Mm.
So part of the work, and I have 7 key sort of downloads that I learned on the other side. And I'm happy to talk about those. But part of our work here, I believe, is to untrain and unprogram the physical body from a lot of the crummy programming that we got in our history. I mean, if you think about epigenetics and how that works, we have 7 generations back on both sides of the family of their crummy DNA programming that's filled with fear and filled with worry and doubt and like worst case scenarios and, a lot of lack and limitation. And so I believe that we and you listening came here at this time to untwist from that, unwind from that, and really install something different. And you're so right. We really do have to feel a different feeling. And that's what's hard for people is because unlike going from jazzy vibes to that 80s music on Spotify, there's no attachment to that. But we have so much attachment to feel the feelings in our body. And our body is just like, well, wait a second, I want to feel frustration. Wait a minute, I want to wake up in the morning filled with anxiety or depression or whatever it is, right? And so there is a little bit of work in that, but like I said, when people start doing the work, and I see this all the time, I work with oftentimes people who are really sick and have really gnarly diseases like cancer, and they can literally change an outcome for themselves in about a week's time if they work the tools.
Wow, amazing.
Mhm.
So there's so much more we could talk about here, but you mentioned you received other downloads in your near-death experience.
Yeah. So one of the biggest downloads I got was that we are all individuated rays of light, divine source energy. And the program here on earth is that you're human and you're separate from your source. You're human and you need something outside of you to redeem you or do the work for you. And I have this saying I say, no one can eat the salad for you. You have to eat the salad for yourself. And so the same thing goes. No one can have that divine connection for you. You have to remember that you are this individuated ray of light and you have direct access to that connection. But here's the magic. When you do remember that, there is a DNA trigger that happens inside your body and your chakras align themselves. And all of the sudden, you've got access to new wisdom. You've got access to new frequency because on the other side, your core frequency, and this, by the way, is another download I got there. Your core frequency is that of instantaneous healing, instantaneous manifestation. What you think about or what you focus on happens instantly. Like there's no time space up there. It just happens. And so that's your frequency, and your frequency is total unconditional love and bliss. Like it's bliss. And so when you remember that you are part of that and it is part of you, it opens up your chakras to allow that frequency to come through you. And then you can have more instantaneous manifestations. You can have more access to instantaneous healing. And I work with people all the time on installing those frequencies for themselves. I don't do it for them. We have to do the work ourselves. But yeah, it's such beautiful work when we start to work with that. Another really big one that came through up there, and it's not popular. I do want to say, I want to go on record beforehand and say this is not popular, but it's the understanding that you picked your birth date, your birth time, your birth parents. You picked how you wanted to come through, your country, all of it. And you decided the soul lessons that you wanted to learn in this time. And when you take responsibility for that, you can understand your life. I will also say, even though things aren't happening in like relative time, like the past, present, future down here, one of the things I think people forget is if they're having a tough go of something, oftentimes it's alternate, you might call them past lives, but it's alternate life bleed throughs that are affecting them in the now. And because we live in a quantum reality, what's super cool is if you do the healing work in this lifetime, it ripples out to all the other parts of you, the past lives, the future lives, the alternate concurrent present lives. So you have this massive opportunity to take responsibility for everything in your world. And people often really push back with me on this one. It's not popular. And they're like, well, Alyssa, I'm going to take responsibility for this horrible thing that happened to me as a child. And the answer is you're not going to blame yourself for it. You're not going to shame yourself for it, but you are going to say, I'm going to take responsibility for healing this, right? And there's a difference.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And so,
oh, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, and when you take responsibility to say, okay, I encountered this nasty, awful thing that no human being should experience, but I'm going to take responsibility for healing it, not responsibility for attracting it, not responsibility for creating it, because that's putting yourself in a past state that you can't do anything about, but just taking responsibility for this happened. I'm choosing to heal it across all channels, across all lifetimes, across all the, everything, across the soul and galactic plan. Then that's when everything changes and you get access to a different frequency. And instead of being more in victim mode, which by the way, I was in for years and years and years and years.
Mhm.
So I know very much what it's like. And it's an awful state to be in because you cannot change your life from that state.
Yeah, right. And I was just going to say that there's a big difference between victim blaming and then empowering somebody who has been victimized to heal their lives.
Yes, exactly. Almost every person on the planet has been a victim and a victor. So meaning either in this lifetime you've been victimized or in another lifetime you've been victimized and then you switched roles. So maybe in a last lifetime you were totally the victor and that means victimizing somebody else. And now you're working that out because you didn't learn in the last lifetime how to not be a victimizer. So now you're in this lifetime learning how to be a victim. And the goal is to stop the polarity and come back into your heart, right? And that's why we're here in Earth School is to learn to understand polarity and come back into the heart and balance that out and heal.
So you received all of these downloads and seen all of these things. And then how did your experience progress from there?
Well, interestingly enough, when I'm up there, I'm bouncing around, I'm having all these beautiful happenings and exploring parts of the galaxy and exploring, all these different life forms and waveforms. I then saw, at some point, I saw something that really attracted me, and it was a whole sphere that was like Earth. And so I kind of dove all of my consciousness down into Earth. And when I got down there, instead of being the divine consciousness that I was, I realized I feel like Alyssa. I realize I don't have a body, but I'm here in this place that looks and feels a lot like Earth, except everything was sort of olive drab colored. Everything
Mm.
had this olive green, army green color to it. And I went and thought about my ex boyfriend, and instantly I snapped to him. And I was hanging around him, and that felt really good. And then I would go hang around a couple other people. And by the way, I didn't know what was happening until years later. But in this place, finally, a group consciousness came to me and said, "You can stay here for as long as you want. It'll be a very healing place for you, but you cannot come back to the Alyssa body. If you decide to come back, you do have to come back now. And it'll be the hardest thing you've ever done, but the work will be really
Mm.
rewarding," basically. And I thought instantly, yes, I want to come back. And as soon as I thought that, it was like someone dropped me off a 1,000-story building and slammed me down into
Oh,
concrete. It was such a like hitting my body, and it was so heavy and so dense, and I instantly felt all the pain. And that also was a big download that I got. Being human is heavy and it's dense and it's hard work. And it's
right.
a totally vibrational disconnect from up there,
No kidding.
right? Yes. Yes, and then years later, I was reading a book by Savannah Arienta, who described exactly to a T that experience of the olive green world.
Mhm.
And what she said in her book, and I'm reading the pages and I'm like, "Oh my God, I was there," And what she said is that's a place where people go that die of traumatic suicides and drug overdoses.
Oh,
And I'm like,
interesting.
"Oh, well, that makes perfect sense. Check that box."
So it's interesting that the group consciousness told you that it would be a very healing place for you. And I've heard other stories of people who have gone to, they didn't describe it as an olive green, but they've gone to a gray realm where the suicides go, and that's their terminology. I wonder if it's a similar or the same place.
Yeah, I feel like it is, and I feel like it's the astral plane. Like, you and I would call it the astral plane, where you kind of go to heal and you sort of get stuck there for a little while until you can get yourself in a place where your soul is like, "Oh, okay, I can take a breath. I feel like I'm
Mm.
ready to get back at it again."
Interesting.
But literally when you're there, you feel like you're a part of Earth. And for me, because I had a lot of addictions, you go and you hang around other people that have addictions and you're sort of feeding off their energy.
Mm.
And that's a big reason why when you have addictions, your addictions can actually get stronger because you're working directly with the energy that opens you up to direct contact with astral plane energies, which are not positive energies.
Mm.
If you enjoyed this video, you'll find the link to the full interview in the description. You'll also find my guest links and a link to sign up for a one-on-one session for me. You can join the sanctuary, become a YouTube member, or find LCL merch. Thank you so much for your support. Now go do an act of kindness for someone in your life. Be loved, be happy, be at peace, and I will see you in our next video.